Good afternoon, everyone. CareSoft Technology would like to welcome you to our ServiceNow webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly go over just a few housekeeping items. The audio portion of this webinar can be heard through your computer speakers, or if you prefer, you can listen in using the dial-in option displayed on your screen. Please note all your lines have been muted to reduce any kind of background noise during this presentation. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use that Q&A pod you see on the left-hand side of your screen. We will do our best to answer at the end of the presentation, or if not, we'll make sure to follow up with you all offline. Just to tell you a little bit about CareSoft, we are a trusted government IT solutions provider delivering software and support solutions to federal, state, and local government agencies, as well as education and healthcare. CareSoft maintains dedicated teams to support sales and marketing for all of its vendors, including ServiceNow, Google, F5 Networks, and Adobe. Our contact information will be provided at the end of the presentation, so please feel free to give us a call or send us an email. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to our speakers for today. We have Chris Harrell. He is IT Transformation Executive with the Federal and Civilian team at ServiceNow, and Eddie Kemp. He is the Senior Advisory Solutions Consultant with the Federal, Civilian, Healthcare, and Financial team at ServiceNow. Team, the floor, it's all yours.
Good morning, and thanks for that, Brooke. Good morning to all, and afternoon to some. My name is Chris Harrell, ServiceNow's ITX Transformation Executive. So I specialize in all of our transformative solutions in IT, covering IT operations management, IT business management, IT asset management, DevOps, and others. So access, I cover all of our federal agencies and departments all across this great nation. I brought with me the cloud subject matter expert right here at ServiceNow, working with cloud and software-defined software for better than the last decade. So I introduce Eddie Kemp. Eddie, please take a few moments to introduce yourself before we begin.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. Very happy to be here. Looking forward to working with you all today and learning a little bit more about the cloud offerings from ServiceNow, specifically on how we can optimize your multi-cloud environments.
Excellent. And thank you for that. So we've already begun, and we've started kicking off with our introduction and opening that we just crossed. The next, we'll go into an ITOM overview, or IT Operations Management. And you'll see us abbreviated occasionally with ITOM or ITOM. And we'll talk about the key capabilities or the components and outcomes that come out of that around visibility, health, and optimization. We may speak a little bit to how we deliver, but from there we'll go directly into the use cases, right? What do we see in terms of what our customers are experiencing out there? And what is an actual demonstration of what kind of things we're able to capture, what kind of obstacles we're able to navigate around with our actual live environment. So we'll wrap up with the Q&A at the very end. We'll give a time check, and from there, any questions that you have, please feel free to submit them then, or as we go through, occasionally add them to the chat, or there'll be polling questions that we'll ask you to engage in as we go forward. So with no further ado, right, let's begin to attack multi-cloud management and best practices to begin optimizing how IT operates in this world. So in terms of optimizing, being able to make right, how your customers interact with your environment by boosting their ability to actually be agile. And what we're seeing here is an example of our service catalog, their ability to launch into an Azure environment or Red Hat, AWS, right? They're able to have that same look and feel that they would experience in the normal or in their consumer marketplace, right? Same kind of Amazon-ish feel that we continue to hear from our customers. And those outcomes will continue to be, right? This effectively allows them to move away from managing resources in silos. Give your customers the ability to launch directly from their environment the resources that they need on demand. So what's the challenge here? So what we understand is that data exists everywhere in your organization. And as we talked about those three key pillars, we always have to keep in mind, how do we establish visibility? How do we maintain our service health and then optimize those decisions. So since these applications, our managed cloud, our traditional infrastructure exists in several different areas or several different places across our enterprise, in order to establish operational excellence, right, it becomes all about having one platform, having all of those systems and services and silos inform one CMDB that delivers operational excellence. And that excellence will then filter across all of the platform, right, enabling you to do key things with service management, your service catalog, asset management, right, and it's all reading from the same platform. You're able to deliver that kind of excellence all across your IT landscape. So for the three key areas, right, we talked about those pivotal pillars. These are also the ways that Gartner defines IT operations management. And these three key pillars are, just as we continue to highlight, right, in order to deliver high-performing services, it's around establishing visibility, right, starting with an automated population of your CMDB that's aware of the service context, being able to deliver service health even if it's in the cloud, right, and then that last part, again, right, we're just hammering home that point. How do you start to optimize cloud spend? So when we start with that far left piece, right, about visibility, we understand that CMDB is the core, right? It's the foundation for every IT business, and it's the foundation of how the ServiceNow platform begins to start to grow exponentially in terms of the power and value that it delivers. So with our CMDB at the core, right, we're able to address questions around vulnerabilities, incidents, changes. So all of this is able to be tracked and kept and understood in a real-time fashion. So as you think about operating your service environment, regardless of where it is, you have real-time updates of what's actually happening in your environment to make decisions. So as we bring in that information into our CMDB, which is our core, our foundation, it's really important here to see that regardless of what your information is, where it exists, we have a near limitless set of native integrations or ability to bring and digest information from across your entire landscape. Right, we've seen things with our cloud and cloud native groups here in the top sort of middle left quadrant, to SecOps and mobile device management. Regardless of where you're in with the Now platform, bring all of that in to enrich your CMDB. So as you move, as you optimize, as you make decisions in the cloud, you're now able to have a real-time understanding as everything moves and runs around your CMDB. So from there, right, in terms of establishing visibility, we just take it a step further here. So again, regardless of where your information is, right, we're able to establish infrastructure visibility. So you understand where your web servers, your databases, your servers, and where they exist. But where ServiceNow starts to differentiate is our ability to then map that service. So now you can see, right, regardless of if that's a cloud environment or not, what are the actual dependencies on the core infrastructure or the key servers that we're using to run our environment. And then, right, the last step that we do to continue to differentiate ourselves is, as you start to spin up environments in the cloud, how can you figure out how that actual service aligns to a business unit? Now we're able to reduce the noise and figure out what systems, what actual applications, servers, softwares depend on functioning that service. That helps us get the understanding of things like unit costs. How do we actually figure out the impact of an outage? Right? We're able to do this in an unprecedented fashion, and it's automated, all in establishing visibility. So our customers typically are able to walk away with a full map of their environment. What does it look like? Right? This is around establishing visibility into their environment. So whether or not it's an on-prem device or even something that's hosted into the cloud, they have a full view of what that means, right? Visibility across their entire operation estate. So the reason that this is important, the reason that we want to continue to hammer home this part is because this is the core. So once you start thinking about digital transformation and how we start to move and figure out where our organization is going, the first step is, where are we today? Right? So establishing that visibility across your entire estate unlocks all of the power to understand what's our next best move. And from there, right, we talked about it. The key is to then have that service context to align what those services are. Where are they actually driving benefits? How do we communicate what's going well in our environment? And again, right, those will continue to drive our outcomes. So this is our first big pillar in terms of establishing visibility. So the next piece in terms of operations and how you operate your environment is to begin to have proactive management. So we integrate, again, right, with the near limitless set of out-of-the-box connectors for your monitoring solutions. And here we're looking at one, for example, coming in from CloudWatch. All of the alarms, all of the SNMP traps, all come in and inform your event management console. It allows them to understand what's happening in your environment in real time. And with our service maps, now you can attribute where those events or those problems occur all the way to the business unit. That drastically improves your velocity and your alignment with the business. And then the last part, before we get into our demonstration, is just the overview of the high-level discussion of what the expectations were for cloud. Everyone expected it to be the easy button, right? If we need to spin up something quick, a really quick ephemeral environment, how do we do so? Maybe cloud is the best place to do so. And what we found is that actually created a little bit of tension, a little bit of struggle or questions throughout the organization, right? IT ops, the ops manager had to figure out, how do we maintain the visibility and the health of this thing? The CFO then had the question of, how do we pay for this, right? And also SecOps, right? How do we make sure that we have the guardrails to continue to keep our arms around what we have? And what we've found is that by delivering the ServiceNow platform, all of these questions, all of these environments are able to be effectively answered through our hybrid cloud or our agnostic cloud offering that we deliver. So again, right, those three key areas that we do incredibly well with IT operations that extends itself all the way to our edge, right, to our cloud, is establishing visibility. Right, one single CMDB with one data model that informs it. That way we are always certain that throughout the platform, everyone's looking at the latest and greatest, most actionable information that they can use to move forward. We're then able to bind everything that we find across your environment with the ability to monitor its health, right? Is it working? Is it effective? Is it meeting your service uptime? And then the last part, right, the cloud. How do we make sure that folks are able to optimize their cloud decisions regardless of what environment that they use today? So the next piece before we change gears and go into a live demonstration is just kind of a highlight of the use cases, right? So in terms of optimization, what I tend to see a ton of, and Eddie will sort of guide us through step by step, are cloud resources that require you to self-service, right? We want to try to continue to have folks serve themselves in terms of what they're looking for. We can offer a tiered offering, whether it's a small, medium, large, or a silver, bronze, gold sort of package. But how do we enable folks to start to serve themselves in terms of managing their cloud resources? What kind of catalog can we start to generate that they can take advantage of immediately? Right? Service catalog is going to be a common theme that you continue to hear as folks think about digital transformation. In terms of cloud, about how the box, Cloud Insights, is able to move towards savings in terms of AWS. How can I start to what we do around popping tags? Continue to ask, are the tags, can we leverage things that we've tagged in Azure, AWS? Yes. And we take it a step further and actually allow you to self-tagging, like again, like identifying costs, different environments. I think what now is, I think this is a good time to ask our first polling question, Brooke, if you wouldn't mind bringing that up as we transition.
Off that first polling question on the screen for you all.
Okay. And Eddie, are you able to take over the screen?
Let's try and do that right now. Here we go. All right. Can everybody see?
Looks great.
Excellent. Brooke, are we going to wait for the end of the poll, or do we want to go ahead and get started?
You know, I'm seeing majority are saying hybrid. We have a few votes for Azure, AWS, and GCP, but feel free to go ahead and jump in.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thanks for the great overview, Chris. Thanks for Brooks for having us here today and organizing this. So now we can dive into some of the fun stuff. What do these products look like, and how do they address these high-level optimization use cases that were discussed previously by Chris? The first one we're going to tackle here is the self-service management of cloud resources. This is a frequent ask from our customers to be able to take more of a packaged approach, to be able to bring in the compute, network, all the configuration necessary, and put it together, infrastructure as code, and publish it in a catalog for consumption by users, developers, so that we have consistency across those products, quality, and to be able to drive down that time to provision these resources so that they're enabling the velocity of business and the organization. So we work across the major clouds. We have Amazon, Azure, Google, IBM, as well as VMware for on-premise instances. And we support many different templating formats, including Terraform. And the procedure is very simple. I'm leaving it here, not that we're going to walk through the whole thing, but that it really is as simple as identifying an item that's going to go in the catalog, and then bringing in existing templates or creating your own, and then associating those with the template, and then create a provisioning and post-provisioning policy. We'll look into that just a little bit more here in just a minute, but it really is that simple to be able to take an ARM template, associate with a catalog item, publish it, and you can literally have new catalog items for your users to consume in a matter of minutes. Right. So here's what our demo looks like today. This is a multi-tier stack with security services, load balancing services, databases, auto-scaling, web tiers, and I didn't have to know the intricacies of this infrastructure in order to import this and build it for consumption within the ServiceNow environment. So I think this is going to be a great example of how we can make these services more consumable. All right, so with that, I'm going to move over to the demo screen. Now, if I'm logging in as a user, this is the catalog view that I would have. In this case, we only have one catalog item. And you can see here that this is a production WordPress stack. It deploys into multiple availability zones. It uses firewall load balancing and other constructs that help for resiliency, availability, and performance. And all that is hidden under the cover so that all we need to know is how to come in here and launch this and provision this infrastructure. So I'm going to show you just how easy it is to put in this order request. Now what's interesting here is when we think about catalog items, we usually think about a service catalog where I can go in and request an item by going onto a website, but this is also programmatically available. So I can tie this directly into my Jenkins CI/CD pipeline with a REST API call and completely automate this in the background. There's no human requirement necessary for this to be an integral part of my continuous integration and deployment initiatives. Okay? But for now, we're going to do it the old-fashioned way and open up this request form. As you can see, I'm able to populate a lot of the information necessary. We'll see some more of that in the next screen here, but I can make some very simple selections of who I am, what group I want to assign this to. I can do cost centers, business centers. I can link this with existing applications, etc. One nice thing here is that I start with leases on this, so nothing runs in perpetuity. I can have different schedules associated with this. If I'm a developer, I may want to assign this to only operate between 8 and 5 on weekdays. If this is a production environment, then I can set it to always on. But this leasing enables me to maintain a level of governance where as the lease date approaches, an automated workflow can be triggered to determine whether or not we're going to extend that lease or we're going to let that application stack go ahead and deprovision automatically. Okay. So moving over to the provisioning part, this is where we get into some more of the technical details. Now the neat thing here is from a governance perspective is I can pre-populate these and completely hide the ability of others to come in and change these specifications. So a lot of my users may not know what the virtual private data center identification is. And so I may want to come in here, pre-populate this, and even remove this field from the view of the consumer. Similar thing with subnets and key names. Now, I can give them the ability to go and select different sizes of virtual machines for their deployment. Lots of options, security options, sizing options, resiliency options. I can come in here and start off with 2 web servers instead of 1, or I can just bring it down to a simple 1 and let it automatically scale. Again, diverse availability zone databases, lots and lots of options here. But as a user, I can come in here and select these defaults, and in just a matter of minutes, I can click provision this new environment, and it does take a while. So I'm gonna rather than watching the grass grow here, we are gonna move over to an environment that I've already established. And this would be our end result, a simple WordPress environment that we can utilize internally. This could be any application. Again, this is just a demonstration of the ability to have a multifaceted. This isn't just spinning up a virtual machine. It's the networking, it's the security groups, it's the firewall policy, it's everything that you need to build those secure, multi-tier, more complicated applications. And then what we're going to see here is the Amazon dashboard, and see that when we're starting here, I've already provisioned a WordPress stack. So this is the existing environment, and then I have a mid server, which is part of the discovery package for IT operations management visibility. So a little out of scope for today, but it's running in that environment as well. And what we're going to see is when we're going to come back, we're going to see the additional instances and capabilities being launched. Okay. So I can come down here and look at things like our load balancers. We have an existing load balancer, and you can see we're already starting to get the automatic provisioning of the firewall load balancer. The thing that's interesting here is that these components need to be constructed in a certain sequence. You want to construct your auto-scaling groups before you start spinning up virtual machines. You want to remove those from load balancers before you try and deprovision a load balancer. So the system knows not only the correct order of operations to build those stacks, but also the correct order of operations to pause or delete, deprovision that infrastructure. So again, I don't need to know a lot about auto-scaling groups and how all of these pieces work together, that the auto-scaling group is connected to a launch template and all these other things. I don't need to have that information. And in fact, I can take this same stack and deploy it in other environments like my VMware stack or my Azure stack, my Azure environment, and not have to worry too much about the details of the differences in those environments. Okay? And we'll see here in just a minute that these additional instances will start provisioning as the auto-scaling group comes online. So what I want to do now is take a quick look at what this looks like within our management domain. What kind of day 2 operations can I perform once I've done the provisioning of this environment? Okay. This is our cloud provisioning and governance product. Provisioning is what I'm focusing on here a little bit, but one of the things to note is that I can assign quotas to organizations, individuals, so that I can track their spend in terms of the number of virtual machines that they have, the amount of networking they have, the total spend. I don't have a lot of that data in this particular demo, but the idea there is we're going to talk about cost optimization from 2 different perspectives, and within the provisioning and governance perspective, it's really about those quotas and validating that there are financial resources available before we provision new resources. So if the organization has run out of funds, then they can either request more funds or they will not be able to continue doing new provisioning of resources. All right. So now going back to day 2 operations, once I've built up this stack, I can go in and do day 2 operations. So let's see. This is the one that's building, sorry. We want to go to one that is finished. And once completed, I have detailed information about the deployment, including the URL to access it, when it was updated, and when my lease will end on that product. And what's really interesting is I can temporarily pause the entire stack. Now, this isn't an option that you would see if you go into the Amazon console. There's not a button that says this whole application infrastructure stack and put it on pause until I'm ready to work on it again. You would have to go into all the individual components and pause certain ones, delete them, rebuild them later, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a very powerful capability. You can modify the schedule, the lease, or you can completely deprovision or destroy that whole stack. And the nice thing there is you've got a nice cleanup, because if you're going through this interface as opposed to the multiple pages within the Amazon console with extensive knowledge on which parts were built and where. It'd be very easy, for example, to come in here and completely forget to deprovision the databases, which could have a substantial cost implication at the end of the month if I'm not deprovisioning my database instances each time I'm deprovisioning a stack. Okay. If there's anything else you want to look at. I want to show you quickly what this looks like from an administrative perspective. I mean, how hard is this to create and deploy new applications? It's actually quite simple. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to have accounts in the various clouds. And this allows us to understand what the components are, so that whenever I'm trying to provision something, I make sure that it's assigned to one of our availability zones. And we run discovery on this on a scheduled basis to validate our configuration management database, our CMDB, is up to date and correct with the provisioning that's happening in this infrastructure. Okay. So once I decide that I have a need for a new application stack, I can simply come in and create a new stack. We're just going to take a look at what we have already created here and what is entailed in creating a stack in this environment. Okay, so It's actually very, very simple. What I started off with is an existing cloud template. As you can see, we have versioning of that template. So again, infrastructure as code. If I roll out a new version of software with a new template and it fails for any reason, I can simply archive that and roll back to a known good state. When I first looked at the available templates, I downloaded this AWS template from a community catalog, and there were several errors in it. So once I got all those fixed, then I came back and I published that as version 2 and archived the original version, and then I can move back and start making adjustments, enhancements to these in an incremental fashion. The system automatically parses out the JSON or XML files and understands how to, what variables are necessary and how to lay out the forms. All that was done automatically. So we had information on that first form, and here are all the variables that we gathered to deploy that infrastructure. One of them was just the name of that stack. It's very easy to come in here, change up default values, or again, we can hide those options from the user so that they are not needing to know some of the intricacies, but I can come in here and very easily change the default value that I want people to use for that variable, and make it easier for the users or the developers to consume that infrastructure. Okay. And then once I'm done with this, I simply go and publish this into the catalog item, and from the user perspective, it is available for consumption. Okay. All right. So that's a lot of the intricacies, the ins and outs of our provisioning and governance model. Again, the governance there being, do you have the right to utilize this particular catalog item? Do you have money in your budget to launch these types of items? And we're going to see here in a minute that we take a very different look at the financials whenever we move to our next use case. Okay? So I'm going to take just a second here and go to the next use case.
Yeah, and as you take that second, I think this is a good time for polling question number 3, Brooke.
Excellent.
If we could pose that to the group. How do you govern access to the cloud today? All right, results have started to already come in, with most folks citing no official government. Oh no, some folks are saying they actually have policy driven guidelines today, right? Maybe those are guardrails that they may want to port over to their new environment. Good. Thanks for that, and thanks for all for joining. Back to you, Eddie.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. So the second use case that we looked at, that second circle in that Chris introduced us to, is really about driving cloud cost controls. So a couple of interesting things about cloud costs. We talk a lot about driving down costs, but what we find as a rule is that it's really not about driving down costs. It's really about controlling costs. Where do we direct the funds to best meet the goals of the organization? We all have finite resources, and so we want to make sure that we're allocating those the best way possible to achieve our business and our mission outcomes. And an interesting thing here is a lot of people talk about Amazon and other cloud providers wanting to drive as much of that consumption as possible, but they too want you to drive the consumption that's best for your organization. They provide recommendations that we utilize as part of our analysis for for recommendations on cost controls, because those who spend less but get more value tend to actually consume more. So they want to see you get the most value out of those resources, and so do we. We want to make sure that you're getting them allocated to the right missions and using them efficiently to get the best outcomes. Okay? So let's take a look at what does that look like within our infrastructure. So this is a different product. This is called Cloud Insights. It's another product within the IT optimization product line. And as you can see from the dashboard, we have a few different ways that we address cloud spend and how we can make recommendations to make sure that we're utilizing these in an efficient manner. Okay? So the first one I want to look at is the cloud spend analytics. This gives me lots of ways to slice and dice the environment. We use a concept called service categories to normalize what we call compute, network, storage, databases, so that we don't confuse the terminology between the different cloud providers that we may be utilizing. And then we can look at spending trends over time. So if I see a piece of this pie grow from 7% to 10%, then I want to understand what's different in my environment, what use cases are driving the change in the composition of our service categories. And I can also, again, monitor that over time. Why is my spend going up? Is it based off of new projects? Is it based off of success of the projects? Or is it simply inefficient use of resources? Okay. So we can go to our monthly spend, look at how our spend has varied from month to month, and how we expect, based on consumption, for our future expenditures to look. And it looks like, again, we're growing our bill. Is that because we have new projects? Is that because projects are wildly successful? Or is that because we need to get some better cost controls in place for this environment? I'm going to go back to the home page here. One of the ways that we do the cost controls is right-sizing these environments. A lot of organizations are still doing lift and shift to move their workloads from on-premise into cloud environments. And when they do so, what we're finding is that they're often over-provisioning. The same way that you would provision an on-premise server, if you only buy it every 18 or 24 months, you're going to get the most server that you can allocated to that resource. And we're finding that is transitioning over into these cloud environments. So we have the ability to monitor disk capacity, memory utilization, CPU utilization, all the key performance metrics of these systems, and make recommendations on what is the best size for these workloads. Okay. So we can simply go in here and see things like this particular application might be better service moving from an N-class machine to a C-class machine. Now you'll notice here things like the confidence level. The confidence level is built out on several different criteria, partly based off of the data that we received on this application, the variability in the resource utilization, whether or not we're recommending a simple upgrade within a product family or moving across product families within that provider. So we'll give you information about our confidence level in those particular recommendations, and then you can simply take that recommendation and schedule it for provisioning. You can have it go through your normal manual approval process or automatic approval. But one of the reason I'm bringing this up is that this is fully integrated into our incident change and event management system. So this would register as a change, and that change would nullify or augment our understanding of alerts and events coming into the system. So it's part of that holistic platform, and it's completely integrated into our change management system. Okay? So you pick out an existing template that is a standard change, and you can schedule that change to appear in maybe an off hour or during a change window. Okay? You can see here which items have been scheduled, and more importantly, which ones have been declined. It's okay to come in here and say, no, I know that this particular system was correctly sized for this particular application, and in fact, I can look at maybe some higher risk systems that I'm not looking to evaluate for changes in resources at this time. And once you identify those, then you can get more fidelity on your new recommendations. Okay. Business hours is a very important one. We talked about this briefly with the cloud provisioning and governance. If it's part of a dev environment, we may only want that running during certain hours of the day. The demo data is missing from this particular capability, so I apologize for not being able to show you more. But it's very easy to create policies that look at how these resources are being utilized, when they're being utilized, and identify whether or not the change in the hours of operation for those devices will significantly add to your bottom line. Okay? So an example of a policy here is we have different types. We have manual, automatic, and report. What type of action are we going to take based off of matching within these policies? So let's take a quick look at this rewards processing. So rewards processing, we've activated this policy, and we are identifying recommendations for the specific application set. Now, first thing we need to do is match that application set so we understand which items we are going to be targeting for that recommended action. And a virtual machine can only be a part of one policy, and that's for simplicity, so that you don't have systems going on and off and having changes based off of several different policies. So you can modify the order of operations very similar to any type of access control list, so that you get the closest match to your policy intended target. And then once you've identified that you are looking for systems running on the rewards processing account and that it is part of the production environment, then it will match all of those virtual machines, come over here, and it will create a report on the utilization for this policy. So what this is going to do is it's going to look at how would the financials be impacted if we instigated this particular business schedule for that particular application, and it will provide a report on how much money can be saved if we ran that particular policy. Another policy might say that we are going to evaluate these credential or these criteria. Once we have a match on this environment variable, which looks like user acceptance testing, then we go ahead and take these scheduled actions that we change the schedule to 8 to 10 weekdays, that we have a manual change applied, and that we launch these particular workflows for those instances to make sure that they shut down and come back up properly. Okay? So a very powerful tool here where I can identify what's happening in my environment and take automated or manual actions that drive down the unnecessary consumption of some of these resources. Okay? A couple of other items here. Unassigned resources are very important to identify. We want to make sure that all the resources have assigned resources, not just from a billing perspective, but for the health of the CMDB. Who do we contact if this has a problem? Who needs to be notified? Who needs to make the approvals on changes to policy? So it's very important for us to look at what kinds of resources are lacking the assignment variables. And on-premise or legacy infrastructure, this is actually one of the last things to get populated. But whenever you're talking about these new consumption models and the ability to scale very rapidly and operate in a different paradigm, we're going to need that information about who's responsible for this, who has the authority to make changes or authorize changes, and ultimately who owns these applications and can make these cost decisions. Okay? All right. Lots of stuff here. I understand we're not able to go into everything here, but we have two more little sections we'll go through real fast. Unused machines is very similar to the right sizing, but to a greater degree, we're identifying that the load or key metrics that we're obtaining from these indicate that these may be orphaned or no longer usable, in-use systems. So again, we want to validate that these recommendations are correct, and we have several different actions that we can take, like automatically. Let's see here. We can automatically turn off the machine. We can create or we can delete the associated storage. We're working on new actions such as archive that VM before you turn it off so that we have images available to bring that back if necessary. So lots of different ways that we can go in here and clean up our environment from these unused resources. And then finally, we can do some insights on how different organizations within our operation are doing. For example, this is not the one I wanted. Let's see here. This right now that shows the different groups are doing and cost of their systems, and so I apologize for not finding that at this moment. Okay, so that's the Cloud Insights product. Again, the idea here, the distinction, is that we're looking at historical data, making recommendations on how to change the consumption model so that we can more effectively use our resources. That's different than our cloud provisioning and governance, which says, do you have the available funds to launch these new applications that you're requesting? Okay. All right, and then we have one more section, which is the policy and tagging compliance. This is a new offering, so I do have some screenshots that I'll walk you through on this product. Very, very exciting. So what we find is that the tagging is more important to a lot of organizations. They're utilizing that for billing, for understanding the relationships between CIs, a version of service mapping, for operations and support capabilities, lots and lots of different use cases for these tagging. And unfortunately, they don't usually have the tools to ensure that the tagging is compliant with the intentions of the organization. I'll give you one example very quickly, and that is what tags do you have within your environment? You may have some tags that are using one tag in Amazon and a different tag in Azure that mean the same thing? Can we normalize those across all the environments? Do we have maybe a tag that is simply a mistake, a misspelled name or keyword that is popping up and looks like a duplicate tag? So the second thing that we're going to do is we're going to fix tagging within your infrastructure in a centralized place. The tagging can be assigned in so many different places within the infrastructure, within the code, within the consoles of the different operating environments. So we're bringing all that to one place to say, are these matching our tagging governance rule sets? And if not, let's fix that from one location. Okay. And then one thing that's great about this is the tagging information can then be used more effectively across the entire IT ecosystem. We're seeing that across the line of business owners and understanding the P&Ls associated with their applications, security operations, compliance, and again, but coming back to cost control, we can make sure that the items are being tagged, that's feeding into the Cloud Insights product as well as the provisioning and governance. So it's a whole ecosystem of being able to make sure that we're running the right workloads the right way and that we have the visibility and governance to ensure efficient operations. The way we do that is with these checks, the policies. We have two types, one that can validate the number of tags associated with a particular CI. If it has too few or too many tags, there's lots of different use cases for ensuring that the tags are within a certain range of counts. But more importantly, I think, is this idea of presence tag, making sure that the business unit is identified, making sure that maybe the location, the business service, the cost group, whatever is important for you to tag, this is the opportunity to create a rule to validate that the unit number one has that tag, and more importantly, is that tag correct? I can look at Amazon and make sure that everything in Amazon has an Amazon tag, right? I can do similar things with ensuring that everything has a business unit or financially responsible party associated with it, so that we can ensure that all of those tags are being propagated, that they're correct, and they're usable by all those different subgroups. I realize we're running short on time here, so I will wrap up very quickly. This gives us a health dashboard where we can see how many of those assets or CIs are compliant, partially compliant, or non-compliant. And then we also get some information about the tags themselves, the governance of the tags, how many of those are being used, are we seeing duplicates, what are these tags that are only being used once or twice, does that have any information, does that provide any information for us for maybe changing the tag structures or maybe deprecating certain tags. So lots of opportunity here for creation of rules in a single place to ensure not only that those tags out in your operations environments are correct, but as they come back into the CMDB, they're consistent and work well from both billing, operations, and security perspectives. And that's all I have today. We're going to open up for Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. That was a fantastic presentation. I appreciate that, as well as all of our attendees. We do have a few questions rolling in, so I'll spend the last few minutes addressing those. And Chris, Eddie, feel free to jump in. First one coming in is this solution FedRAMP?
Eddie, I'll take the first stab at that one.
Go for it.
Yes, we agree, right? Yes, the entire ServiceNow platform, in fact, is FedRAMP certified. We've met the FedRAMP high requirements for all of our civilian agencies, and also a DoD IL or Impact Level 4 for all of our DoD entities as well. So yes, that's a huge yes. Thanks for that question.
Great, thank
Any
you.
more, Brooke?
And yeah, we got two more, it looks like, and I'll keep checking to make sure. But second one says, will any and every machine that I spin up be captured in the ServiceNow CMDB?
That is the intent, absolutely. So we understand that we're moving into more of an ephemeral world. That's where we're getting into technologies like service graphs that can normalize the ephemeral and the non-ephemeral environments. But yes, we're definitely cognizant of the mode 2 environment. But we still need that historical information, even if an instance only spins up for a short period of time. If we're able to correlate that information back into our alerts and events and understand that it was potentially a bad instance, that there was something wrong with the file system, something of that nature that helps us understand and get closure of those issues faster, absolutely we want to capture all that data from multiple sources and cross-reference it to get to root cause and problem resolution as soon as possible.
Perfect, thank you. And we do have a third question. Seems this is our last one. Do you have the ability to integrate with Terraform?
Absolutely, absolutely. So Terraform is in high demand. We're seeing a lot of call for it. And yes, we could pull in a Terraform template just as easily as we can an AWS template or an Azure ARM template.
Awesome, thank you. Well, again, thank you, Chris and Eddie, for your presentation today. We really appreciate it, as well as everyone else for attending. We hope this webinar has been helpful for you and your organization, and you took something valuable from this lesson today. If you have any further questions or you'd like to request more information, please feel free to reach out. I have a few polling questions here for you all, as well as contact information for Evan Morgan. He supports ServiceNow here at Carasoft, and he can help answer any questions you have in regard to today's subject, or we can also set you up with a demo with Eddie, Chris, or someone else on the ServiceNow side. Thank you again. I'm hoping everyone has a fantastic day.
Thanks, everyone.